Imagine for a second that you are a Hollywood actor.
Okay.
You've just landed the role of a lifetime playing a genius billionaire superhero. And you ask the director how you should prepare.
Which is a pretty massive question.
Right. But the director just looks at you and says, copy this one real-life guy.
Wow.
And that isn't a hypothetical scenario. When Robert Downey Jr. was preparing to play Tony Stark in the first Iron Man movie, his primary instruction from the director was literally just copy Elon Musk.
It's almost surreal to think about that now, given everything.
It really is. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a fascinating, really singular document that explores the massive contradictions of the man who inspired that cinematic hero. Our mission today is to figure out how a guy who was once universally hailed as a real-life Tony Stark is now, increasingly viewed by some as a supervillain.
It's a genuinely dramatic shift in public perception. And to really understand how we got here, we can't just look at the billionaire making headlines today or the chaotic social media persona. We have to examine the history of a bullied boy from South Africa who was repeatedly told he was absolutely nothing.
Which is such a wild contrast, because usually when people have severe childhood trauma, they might use it to, I don't know, write a sad poem.
Right, or start a garage band.
Exactly. Musk used his trauma to try and colonize Mars.
Yeah, the scale of his reaction to that environment, just unprecedented. And that environment was incredibly intense. We are talking about South Africa under his father, Errol Graham Musk.
Right.
Errol wasn't just a strict parent. He was a wealthy engineer, a property developer with significant political influence throughout the 70s and 80s. He reportedly owned an emerald mine in Zambia.
Yeah, the research mentions this was a family that had safes so completely stuffed with cash that the doors literally wouldn't close.
Exactly. In that household, money was power, and power was absolutely everything.
And then you have Elon, who was basically the complete opposite of his father. He was incredibly quiet, intensely smart, and he had Asperger's syndrome.
Which made social connections extremely difficult for him.
Yeah, a struggle that the source document notes continues even today. But instead of recognizing his son's intellect as a gift, his father called him weak. He told him he was stupid and a loser.
And school wasn't any kind of sanctuary either. In the classroom, he was the kid who always had the answer, no matter how hard the question was. The teachers praised him and told the other kids to be more like him.
Which is the worst thing you can do for a kid's social life.
Absolutely. As anyone who has ever been to middle school knows, that effectively painted a massive target on his back. He was bullied relentlessly. One of the most horrific details from the background research recounts an incident where other students actually pushed him down a flight of stairs.
It was brutal.
He was beaten so badly he was hospitalized with facial injuries.
And the craziest part is when he finally came home from the hospital, his father didn't offer him any comfort at all. He blamed his son. He told him it was his own fault for being weak and that he needed to toughen up.
What's fascinating here is how that specific repeated trauma didn't just fade away or result in withdrawal. It became the raw fuel for everything that followed. His rise to power wasn't driven by some sunny desire for inspiration. It was driven by a desperate, burning need for escape.
And he found that escape in computers. While other kids his age were just playing video games, Musk was building them. By the age of 12, he coded his own game called Blastar.
Right.
But he didn't just build it for fun in his bedroom and show it to his friends. He sold it for $500, which back in 1983, for a 12-year-old in South Africa, was a massive sum of money.
That moment is the first clear sign of his dual nature. You have the pure, unadulterated genius required to code a game at that age, combined directly with a very sharp innate instinct for monetization. He knew exactly how to extract value from his intellect from day one.
He also knew exactly when to get out. Whenever he felt his growth was being stunted, he physically escaped. He moved from South Africa to Canada when he was 17.
And then to America at 21.
Right, actively seeking out environments that rewarded intelligence rather than punishing it. He ended up at the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied both economics and physics.
And that academic combination built a foundation that allowed him to view the world through a very specific lens, the lens of both money and matter.
Armed with that lens, he gets his first big win. At age 24, he and his brother Kimball started a company called Zip2. Now, for you listening, to put this in perspective, Zip2 was essentially an early 1995 version of Google Maps.
Which was completely unheard of at the time.
Exactly. They took business databases, linked them up to physical maps, and created a way for people to find what they needed online. In 1995, that idea was completely revolutionary. He eventually sold Zip2 and walked away with $22 million. He was only 28 years old.
$22 million at 28. For anyone else, that is the end of the story. You buy a private island, you retire to the beach. But for Musk, money isn't the destination. It is just fuel for the next escape.
The next massive problem to solve.
Exactly. He immediately poured that Zip2 money into a company called X.com, which would eventually become PayPal. His goal was huge. He wanted to fix the entire broken global banking system and replace long lines and hidden fees with a single click.
But here is where the pattern of bullying emerges again, this time in the boardroom. The corporate politics at PayPal were vicious, and there were massive internal disagreements over the company's technical architecture.
And his leadership style.
Right. So the board orchestrates a coup. They wait until Musk boards a flight for his honeymoon. While he is literally in the air, completely unreachable and powerless to stop it, they fire him from the CEO position. He lands, and his company has been taken from him.
It's a stunning betrayal that perfectly mirrors the lack of control he experienced in his youth. The humiliation of being ousted publicly is profound. Yet, because he had aggressively retained his position as the largest shareholder.
When eBay eventually bought PayPal, he still walked away with $165 million.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is where the story goes from a standard Silicon Valley success narrative to something almost unbelievable. He is 30 years old. He has a fortune of $165 million.
Yeah.
And instead of playing it safe, he chooses to gamble absolutely everything on two impossible dreams: SpaceX and Tesla.
He famously reasoned that no one takes money with them when they die, so he decided to use his to touch the stars. The origins of SpaceX are incredible. He actually went to Russia to try and buy refurbished rockets.
And they basically laughed him out of the room.
Completely. The Russian aerospace engineers dismissed him entirely, treating him like an amateur. So on the flight back, he started running the numbers on a spreadsheet. He realized that the actual physical cost of the raw materials for a rocket was just a tiny fraction of what NASA was being charged by aerospace contractors.
Because NASA was relying on legacy contractors who had absolutely no incentive to make things cheaper, Musk realized that if you applied a Silicon Valley startup mentality to aerospace, building parts in-house, iterating rapidly, and accepting failure as a design step, you could build a rocket for pennies on the dollar.
He reasoned he could completely change the economics of space.
But the beginning was an absolute disaster. The brutal failures just kept piling up, very publicly. The first Falcon 1 rocket failed, the second one failed to reach orbit, the third one failed because of a tiny momentary timing error during staging.
Imagine the tension in that control room.
By 2008, he had burned through his entire fortune. He was down to his last cent. He had parts for one single launch left. And if it failed, SpaceX was dead and he was bankrupt.
And concurrently, Tesla was bleeding out. He didn't start Tesla, but he had heavily invested his remaining capital into it, and it was running out of cash fast.
You really have to remember what the world looked like back in 2004 when he got involved. Electric cars were viewed as a total joke. People thought of them as slow, undesirable golf carts.
Yeah, the perception was terrible.
Tesla wasn't just trying to build a cool car. They had to invent entire charging networks, battery architectures, and supply chains completely from scratch. The early Roadsters had massive transmission issues. By late 2008, the money was simply gone.
It was his absolute lowest point. But then, at the very end of 2008, two miracles happened in a single week. First, SpaceX launched their fourth rocket, and it successfully reached orbit. NASA, having seen this relentless, consistent effort despite the failures, awarded them a massive $1.6 billion contract to resupply the space station.
Wow.
And in that exact same week, on Christmas Eve, Tesla managed to secure last-minute investment to keep the lights on.
Talk about a true second chance at life. Just as Robert Downey Jr. was rising from his own severe, career-ending personal struggles with the release of the first Iron Man movie that exact same year, 2008, Musk was literally rising from the ashes of his failed rocket launches.
The parallel is striking.
He proved that he could force stagnant, massive fields like space exploration and automotive transport to fundamentally change.
He gave people hope. Tesla eventually became the most valuable car company in the world, and SpaceX made rockets reusable, which the legacy aerospace industry thought was impossible. But as we move forward in the timeline, the contradictions become impossible to ignore.
This is where things start to shift.
Exactly. The hero narrative really begins to fracture, and he earns a reputation as the king of the U-turn.
The research highlights several prime examples of this whiplash. He calls himself a free speech absolutist, yet he often acts autocratically within his own companies. He will praise Donald Trump one day and deeply insult him the next. He declared Bitcoin the currency of the future and started accepting it for Tesla cars, only to completely revoke that decision just weeks later, sending the markets into a tailspin.
And then we have the Twitter acquisition, which is where things take a significantly darker turn.
The $44 billion purchase of Twitter, the immediate aftermath was chaotic. He fired 80% of the staff right out of the gate. He sent out that infamous, extremely hardcore email demanding that employees either commit to working through the night at high intensity or take a severance package and leave immediately.
It was brutal.
If you look at that incident in total isolation, destroying thousands of livelihoods with a single keystroke looks like pure villainy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the narrative gets highly political. And just to be completely clear for you listening, our goal today isn't to take a left-wing or right-wing stance on this. We are strictly unpacking the strategy laid out in the research material.
Right, maintaining strict impartiality.
Absolutely. The underlying argument of the source document is that Musk didn't buy Twitter to make it a profitable social media company. He bought it for sheer political leverage.
Twitter had previously banned Donald Trump. As soon as Musk took over the platform, that account was restored. But he didn't just provide a platform. He became a massive political influencer himself, actively funding Trump's campaign with tens of millions of dollars.
The analysis suggests that without Musk's financial and platform support, the election landscape might have looked very different. So why does this specific shift matter to you, the listener? Because while Twitter's actual financial valuation dropped by more than half since he bought it, Musk didn't care. He was buying power.
It's a huge distinction.
Consider SpaceX. It relies entirely on billions of dollars in government contracts. By financially and practically supporting a presidential candidate, Musk essentially ensured a direct line to his biggest investor, sitting right in the Oval Office. He shifted from just running tech companies to actively shaping global power structures.
Which brings us to the darker side of his future plans, starting with Neuralink. The stated goal sounds incredibly noble, creating a brain implant to help paralyzed people walk again or communicate.
Yes, on paper it sounds revolutionary.
But that noble goal is contrasted with a very grim reality regarding the testing phase. Since 2017, Neuralink has conducted aggressive testing on animals, pigs, sheep, and monkeys. The estimates suggest that 1,500 animals have died in these experiments.
It's hard to hear.
The research shares a horrifying detail of extreme suffering, noting a report of a monkey that was so brain damaged and desperate from the implant that it actually chewed off its own fingers.
That is profound and difficult to process, and this raises a critical question for humanity that goes beyond the animal testing. It's about the end goal of the technology. Musk claims that humans must merge with machines to stay relevant in an AI-dominated future. But imagine the real-world consequences for you. What happens when a technology like this becomes mainstream? What happens if the free tier of a brain chip includes advertisements streamed directly into your conscious thoughts? If we merge with machines built by this specific man, do we simply become puppets in a system that he completely controls?
The theme of unprecedented centralized power continues with Starlink. On the surface, Starlink is pure genius. It is a network of thousands of low-orbit satellites providing high-speed internet to the most remote corners of the Earth.
True global access.
Yeah, it requires no physical cables, no traditional cell towers, and crucially, no government permission to operate locally.
But that lack of oversight is exactly where the danger lies. A remote jungle group could use Starlink to bypass national surveillance systems entirely for encrypted communications or to operate drones. We saw the full weight of this power play out during the Russia-Ukraine war. The Ukrainian military heavily relied on Starlink for everything from troop coordination to drone strikes against the Russian fleet. But when Musk personally became uncomfortable with how his technology was being used, fearing it might escalate into a larger global conflict, he actively restricted access in certain regions.
A single private billionaire deciding the operational capabilities of a sovereign nation's military during an act of war, that is completely unprecedented. And while he restricted it for Ukraine, there are reports that Russian troops are allegedly acquiring and using the Starlink tech anyway, via black markets or technical workarounds.
Exactly.
Sovereign nations are now literally tied to one man's mood, personal comfort level, and geopolitical whims.
Finally, we have to look at the massive, deep hypocrisy regarding artificial intelligence. Musk has repeatedly and loudly called AI the single biggest existential threat to humanity. He has claimed it will turn us into pets or completely manipulate the world through deepfakes and unchecked misinformation.
He's been very vocal about that.
Yet, despite those dire apocalyptic warnings, what is he doing? He is aggressively building his own AI company. He is developing autonomous humanoid robots. He is
Yeah.
pushing unregulated self-driving cars onto public roads.
Critics point out the obvious contradiction here. If you truly believed AI was going to destroy humanity, you wouldn't be locked in a breathless race to perfect it first.
It reflects that deeper behavioral pattern we've been tracking since his childhood in South Africa. He claims money doesn't matter to him, yet he fights tooth and nail in court for a $1 trillion pay package at Tesla. He claims to be a free speech absolutist, yet he behaves like a troll on his own platform, promoting conspiracy theories and actively silencing the journalists and critics who question him.
So as we bring all of this together, we have to ask you, what are we really looking at here? Is this an epic battle between an idealist vision for humanity and a massive unchecked ego?
It's the ultimate question.
Inside Musk, it seems like a hero and a villain are fighting for dominance every single day. One day, you are looking at a once-in-a-generation genius who legitimately wants to save humanity, fix climate change, and push us to the stars. The very next day, you are dealing with a control freak who simply doesn't know when to stop.
The sheer concentration of technology and influence in one man's hands is staggering. He holds the keys to global social media discourse, the future of mobility, planetary internet access, space exploration, and now high-level global politics.
It's a lot for one person.
It is a strange, dark irony that the man who originally inspired the cinematic Iron Man, the hero who privatized world peace, is now being actively compared in the cultural zeitgeist to Doctor Doom,
Wow.
the ultimate autocratic villain who believes only he can save the world by ruling it.
It leaves us with so much to process. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, something that really builds on everything we've unpacked today.
Go for it.
If one man's unresolved childhood trauma and unyielding desire for total control can single-handedly reshape global communication, modern warfare, and human evolution, what happens when that single point of failure inevitably disappears? Who or what inherits the keys to a world built entirely in his image?